Somewhere between night and silence, a door begins to open. There are voices no one talks about, sounds that shouldn't exist, and stories that follow you even after the lights go out. You're stepping into a world where reality cracks, where the shadow whispers, but truth screams. Welcome to the channel Door to the Beyond. Prepare yourself, and if you have the courage, subscribe now. Let the door stay open.
Shadows born of paper.
Sometimes the boundary between knowledge and the abyss becomes perilously thin. So thin that a single misstep, a single thought one should not have explored, can lead to the complete destruction of the soul. Our story takes place in a secluded, ancient manor which stood on the very edge of the world, far from the bustle of cities and the glow of lamplight. It was a manor that had seen many generations, but its walls remembered despair more than joy. Every creaking step, every splitting beam, every breath of cold air that seemed to crawl from beneath the tiles told a story of decay and oblivion. The protagonist of our narrative is Doctor Alaric, a brilliant yet reclusive philologist who had isolated himself from the world to fully devote himself to his obsessive study. His passion lay in lost languages and ancient manuscripts that no one else dared to decipher. He lived in a vast library, its shelves reaching to the ceiling, overflowing with thousands of volumes that smelled of dust and forgotten things. It was a sanctuary and a prison at once, where light battled darkness, and the only sound was the rustle of turning pages. Days and nights he spent poring over parchments, his only companions a flickering candle and the endless silence, occasionally punctuated by the creak of old wood or the distant bark of a fox. Alaric focused on one particular text. It was an unmarked scroll discovered in a secret chamber deep beneath the manor, under the old foundations where sunlight never penetrated. It was written in a language unlike anything he had ever seen, and its script consisted of sharp, angular symbols that seemed alive, shifting under his gaze. It appeared older than history itself, older than the very stone upon which the manor stood. The more Alaric delved into the text, the more it consumed him. Words began to appear to him in dreams. His mind was overwhelmed by strange, meaningless symbols, even when awake, dancing before his eyes like flies. He felt he was approaching something monumental, something that would alter his understanding of reality. He felt an insistent pull, as if the scroll were calling to him, luring him into its depths. The first sign that something was amiss was the headaches, pulsating, sharp pains that came at regular intervals, always after long hours spent over the scroll. They were like icy needles piercing his temples. Then came insomnia. Alaric found he couldn't sleep. As soon as he closed his eyes, Images from the scroll manifested in his mind, dancing before him and whispering. The whispers were initially incomprehensible, just a jumble of alien, hissing sounds that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the manor. But gradually, they began to form into words that sounded as if spoken by many voices at once, an ancient choir from endless depths. It sounded like, "Come, come to us, unravel." Perceptual shifts were the next phase. The light in the library began to seem strangely dim to him, even when the sun shone brightly. Colors faded, and the contours of objects blurred. Shadows in the corners of the rooms appeared alive, stretching and creeping as if slowly approaching. Sometimes, when he looked at the window, he felt he saw flashes of movement in the dense, ancient forest beyond the manor, even though no one could possibly be there. He was convinced he was nearing the truth, that the text was trying to reveal its true secret to him, and that the shadows were its messengers, guiding him deeper into knowledge. One chilling night, after days and nights without sleep, Alaric realized something else was in the library with him. It was not just a feeling. It was a cold, tangible chill that did not come from the windows, but seemed to emanate from the empty rooms beyond the library doors. As he looked up from the scroll, he saw them, vague, shadowy figures hovering among the shelves. They were formless, as if woven from the deepest darkness, but he felt a cold, ancient presence from them that constricted his chest. They made no sound, merely moved in his peripheral vision, materializing and vanishing, dancing on the edge of his sanity. Alaric tried to ignore them, attributing them to fatigue and overexertion. But they grew louder. Their whispers turned into a cacophony that thundered in his ears, sounding like tens of thousands of insect wings buzzing directly at his temples. He began to converse with them, at first only in his thoughts, then aloud. His voice was hoarse and breaking. He believed they were the guardians of the text, leading him to a deeper understanding, to the unlocking of world-altering secrets. The shadows began to show him visions of places he had never seen, and events that had occurred thousands of years ago. They were images of desolation, decay, and an ancient, unspeakable horror that predated the very concept of time. His mind began to unravel into pieces like old parchment. He stopped eating, barely drinking. His only sustenance was the text, which had become his obsession. His only company, the shadows, who had become his masters. His skin grew pale to a deathly shade. Dark circles formed under his eyes like deep hollows, and his voice became a raspy whisper, barely audible. The mirror no longer reflected the face of a scholar, but an empty, emaciated countenance with eyes that burned with a feverish, insane gleam, seeing things no human should ever witness. One icy morning, when the servants, alarmed by his absence and the strange noises emanating from the library, burst into the library, they found Dr. Alaric collapsed over the empty space where the scroll had once lain. His body was cold, but on his face was an expression of horrifying triumph, mingled with ecstasy and a final, insane comprehension. His open eyes stared into nothingness, yet seemed to behold something beyond our world that had completely consumed him. And the scroll, it had vanished without a trace, as if it had dissolved into dust or become part of the unspeakable. Since then, strange tales are told about the manor. It is said that when thick darkness falls at night and the moon illuminates the old walls, a faint, multi-voiced whisper can be heard from the library windows. A whisper that tempts, that promises forbidden knowledge. And occasionally, in the darkest corners, intangible shadows are said to appear, moving among the ancient shelves, as if still searching for that lost scroll. Or perhaps they are searching for the next one who dares to gaze into the abyss that Dr. Alaric unveiled, and who will become the next victim of the obsession that paper birthed and shadows awakened. The light is gone, but the shadows remain. If you wish to hear what was never meant to be spoken, subscribe to this channel and leave behind a trace, a thought, a whisper, left in the comments. It may lead us somewhere the light has never reached.